So to do much to the other side, or to finish up the other side, I need to get the starter in because there's a cable that runs under here and connects to everything over here. So my next step is going to be putting the starter in. Before we do that, there's a taper pin you need to install right there. So I have my taper pin installer tool. Just going to set that down there. In the starter. I'm going to go clean up the wire real quick. Well, I forgot to hit record, but I installed a cable clamp right there for the starter wire. And then while I was getting the starter, a little tab broke off. Yeah, not a big deal. I don't really care. I don't think the thing's doing anything anyway. But it still kind of sucks. So, starter goes there. Apparently there's a fly going around. I'll take care of him later. So see, the starter wire goes under what's going to be the ignition plate here. So that's you're going to take one of these off. It's not something you just take off real easy. You're pulling the top of the motor apart. Anyway, I'll get the starter bolts and get this mounted correctly. Alright, here's the problem with putting in the starter bolts. If you remember from my other videos, I use anti-seize on everything. The starter bracket is grounds through the rest of the motor, which then the starter itself, grounds the starter bracket. It's only real way to do that, paint under here, and the bolts. I'm going to sand this ever so lightly, hope that'll increase the ground. So now, I want anti-seize on these things, but I don't want a lot. So I'm just going to put a little dab right there. Hope that still grounds. Going to go ahead and remember to put the washer in. There's a little snug on there right now. I'll tighten them down the rest of the way when the flywheel's on. I'm going to make sure they can clear okay. When I make sure that it doesn't have to adjust in or out or anything, then I'll tighten them down the rest of the way. Well, as I just broke, and as you can see, our neutral start relay switch is broken. I don't care that I just broke the base trying to get the electrical tape off because it was already broken. Had it not have been already broken, I would have been pretty pissed off at myself. But it was, so who cares? Now, I could go get my flathead and do this, but I don't know where it's at. Because I use it for everything, and I keep losing stuff. So if anybody's got a big toolbox they want to donate, just let me know. Alright, this is stupid. Alright, starter wire's off. And by the way, recently I made a video called How to Remove a Johnson Evinrude Extension Kit. In that video I pulled this power head off and you could see the broken neutral start switch in this too. It's given the fact that every 9.9 or 15 horsepower I have around here that's electric start all has a broken neutral safety switch, it's an obvious problem. Or they're an obvious problem rather. But I've been debating to myself for the past few months, do I want to spend $75 on a new switch? Immediately that answer was no, but I've been kicking the idea around, and here we are a few months later, and it's still no. I don't think anybody else is going to be driving this boat, and I don't think it's going to be all that powerful trying to start it in gear. If it does kick off, you ain't going to go flying out of the boat, I don't think. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to do basically what they did here, and just kind of bypass it. I'm going to install the brackets though, just in case the time does come where I come across one, I can reinstall it. But for now, I'm gonna bypass it. So there's ring terminals on the end of each one of these. There's a flat spot and then an indent spot. I'm going to be going back to back on these. That ring terminal is new. Not going to worry about that. This is the original ring terminal. It's old, so I'm going to clean the back side just to make sure we get a good connection. So I'm going to be using the same stupid screw that I took out of the power head you just saw over there. It obviously fit, and there's one here. So make life easy on me. Should I need to get this out, I'm going to put the Phillips side towards me, and that side in the back. Make sure that angle is going to work okay. Looks like it will. It'll fit down inside there nicely. So I'm going to get some tape or some heat shrink or something and cover up this end now. Alright, I have a piece of single wall adhesive lined 4X heat shrink tubing. I'm just going to be putting that over it, heating it up and hoping for the best. So that's as small as it's getting, but while this glue is still wet, I can squeeze it back together, make sure it traps in the bolt there. So it looks a little funky, but I think that'll work better than a piece of electrical tape would. There's my heat gun, and the end is a deflector shield, which I broke and then hose clamped on. It's working out great. So the first thing you're going to want to install is the bottommost part, because you ain't getting it in else otherwise. So let's fight this thing in here. Ain't using the screwdriver. That kind of sucks. Oh, you know what? And apparently I'm still not using the screwdriver. Gonna start that one. Get the other little screw. Put some anti-seize on the end. And then tuck my wire underneath. Round it down like so, and that's where it will forever live. Alright, next is our shift detent. I already have some anti-seize on the end of my bolt. I'll force that thing in there. Now I'm going to do the bottom first. You'll see why in a second. Alright, bottom is started. Let that balance there. Anti-seize on the next bolt. Now this bracket bolt goes through that. This goes up, and then the thing gets installed, just like so. I didn't want to try to hold this up while trying to get all this aligned, so that's why I like doing the bottom first. Alright, shift detent is on. Now for the fuel lines. So actually this wire should be in this little crease, so I'm a little off. So I'm going to undo this and fix that up. Yep, that looks a little better. Now I'm going to do the shift detent. At this point you're going to have to ask yourself a question. What would I rather fight with? The rod that goes down onto this little bracket right here, or the fuel line? I'm going to choose to fight with the fuel line this time. So I'm going to be installing this first. I'm not going to be putting the cotter pin in until it's done. That way if I need to pull it out and rotate it for adjustment I can. Seems to be a pretty good place for it. Now I'm going to put the fuel pump back on, but before I do, I'm going to pull this thing off. Take the gasket out of there. And install our fuel line. I'll zip tie it down later. On the Powerhead gasket set came a new fuel pump gasket, so I'll be installing that. Put some of this on both sides just to make sure we got no issues. Yep, let's go put it in the motor. For added security, I'm going to be putting the zip tie on the bottom down here. Zip ties, black. Usually they're the UV oil, sunlight, gasoline resistant. White, usually standard indoor use. So black outdoor, white indoor. It says that on the packaging if you ever want to take a look. But anyway, so if you're going to be doing this, try to use a black one. I don't know if you could tell how hard it was to get that fuel line on there. Well, not that it was hard, but it was how stiff it was, if you will. There's a very good chance that you don't need to put the zip tie on. You should, secondary lock or whatever. But what I'm saying is you don't need to go to town with hose clamp. Zip tie will do just fine. So we'll route the front up, connect it up later, but we're going to do that after we get the cotter pin into our shift rod here. So I'm just going to leave it hanging off right there. The Powerhead gasket set, let me rotate, somewhere in here. Came with a new one of these things, so I'll be using that one. So let's go back over to here. It goes there, fuel pump goes there, so I'm going to cut it. Right to about there, I believe. Strong stuff, let me tell you. Good fuel line though. Got a hose clamp. Yep, looks like a good size. Now I don't really want to break this, so tighten it up the rest of the way. I don't really want the hose clamp sticking out that far, so what I'm going to do is take this off now. And I got the thing on there. Rotate it downward. And I lost my gasket. Lovely. So, it looks like that'll work. The less stuff you got in the way, the better. What I'm doing now is fishing the choke cable, or not cable rather, but electrical connector behind the little starter link arm thing. I'm going to loop this around over to here, plug it in. Honestly, it really looks like it can stay right there. The alternative, kind of have it flopping out around over there. The hood seal goes right there, so you can see that it's kind of a problem. I haven't really seen a good way these are routed yet, but looks like right there it'll work. If this connector body kind of finds its way in this crevice, I don't know how it would because it's wider than that. That might give you some shifting problems, but I think that's a good spot for it right there. So I took the main gas line back off and looped it around over to here. Reason being, I forgot about the rectifier. That's kind of a little important piece. Well, not really. I mean, just charges, so not that important, but you know, important enough. I don't know how well this is going to fit with my zip tie on there. It looks like a pretty close fit without it. So I'm going to use my hose clamp pliers and rotate this thing if I can. Yep. All right, perfect. Now the rectifier is pretty close to the fuel line, this bottom one. It's kind of debatable if this pump should have had it coming off the top. Probably should have, but whatever, that's what we got. If I need to change the fuel pump for whatever reason, I'll keep that in mind. I'm going to do the easy one first, which you shouldn't, but I am. Now, when I say you shouldn't, it doesn't really matter. It's just a lot of people have preferences. Get the hard one out of the way so the rest will go easy, but they're really not that hard. Alright, I got it started. In case you're wondering what the rectifier does, it takes the random miscellaneous voltage coming off our stator up here and transforms it into a constant 12 volts. So it's if you have electric starting flywheel or whatever, it's kind of important. Now the daunting task of getting in here with a wrench and tightening these things one tiny turn at a time. Alright, all that's in there. We have a customized wire right there. I don't really think that's going to be any problems. The rest of these look like they're all going the right way. It's a little hard to tell in these faded wires, but you basically have a yellow wire with white stripe, yellow wire with blue stripe. Doesn't matter what order they go in, as long as those colors coming off the rectifier match what's up here, then you're okay. Our red wire connects over to right here, and that trickle charges our battery. And when I say trickle charge, I'm not kidding. This thing puts out, you know, like 6 amps or whatever, or 5 or something. It's nothing. Alright, find the screws to go into here. I'll get that installed. Now I'll put the fuel line back on. Fuel line just kind of sitting there right now. Basically what's got to happen, that goes in like so, right through there. We can pull a little more out, get a little better angle. And that is where our fuel line's going. That should be the last time we got to take that off. Alright, looks good. Now to mount this, if you may remember, I put all these screws back in to hold the bottom plates all together. So now it's time to take them back out. Set that off to the side. Now I'll worry about that later. Make sure the wire isn't going to get pinched on this thing. That goes there. You're going to notice my screw heads are all green. That's because I put them in there when I primered the top. I already put anti-seize on all of them. So no real concern there. I figure why clean the green off? Just keep them from extra layer of protection, you know. Alright, I'm going to tighten those down a little more in a second. Right now I'm going to use a rag and clean off a lot of this old grease. Now, I could take this plate off, polish it all up, make it look like $1,000,000, but the power head looks clean, so that's good enough, right? Now just kind of try to eyeball line up the holes. Looks like right about there. Now, that plate rotates. I may need to sand the paint off of that. Depending on how tight of a fit this is going to be. Let's hope not, because I just greased it up. Yeah, let's clean it up. You know, maybe I shouldn't paint these anymore. Maybe I'll run some tape along them. Because I've had to do that every time. I just forgot about it. So, put some more grease along that lip. And then rub a little bit of the brass ring on the inside of the plate there. Oh, by the way, I cleaned this up too. Tiller handle's not hooked up yet, so there's no twisting it, but you can get it out of gear, twist it by hand. This should be a little closer, so we'll have to adjust that a little, but it works. So, let's see if you can tell. See how we're on that line? But there's no, this isn't touching this plate. Means that plate's got to come out a little. Which feels like it's out as far as it can go. So, oh, that is a little loose side too. We'll tighten this guy up, see what happens. What size is this thing? So right when it passes it moves. So I think we're okay right there. Alright, let me zoom out here. And that's where we're at so far. I'm going to turn the motor around, and then we'll get the coils onto the back. So I'm getting ready to install the power pack and coils, and I noticed this. This is one of the older connector bodies. If you see, it's perfectly round all the way around. We have an aftermarket power pack here. It's been replaced. See the connector body? See that flat spot? That's an identifier for the newer style connector ends. And then we have an older style on this side. So this connector body needs to be able to plug into here, which it technically will if you force it and cram it in there, but it's not designed to mate. There's a good chance that it's going to back itself off eventually. I have a spare original factory power pack, this guy, that has both round connector bodies on both ends, the way it's supposed to be. You probably could just swap the connector bodies over at $5 to $8 each. They're kind of expensive. For now, I'm going to be using the older power pack on there just to make sure everything's right. So let's do the power pack first. Alright, I cleaned up the ground wire on the power pack first. It's a good idea to do that, just sand it down a little bit. Last thing you want to be doing is trying to chase down ground issues after you're done getting this on. So install like so. I have the main wire here running through the back. Don't necessarily know if that's going to be a good idea or a bad idea, but probably a bad idea actually. I'll just hang it off to the front. So I'm going to force it into its spot here. Try to get the bolt started however you can. Maybe I'll do the top first. Alright, power pack is on. Now we'll do the coils. The coils I took off here are pretty old and pretty crappy, so I opted not to reinstall them and install the new setup that I have. The new setup is just sitting on another engine over there. So these were replaced not too long ago, so I'll be installing these. I'll show you why in a second. Alright, see these have the little points here for the coils trigger wire to connect, and our old coils, or the original coils that came off here, do not. It's the older design. So if you wanted to swap the coil, you also need to get your tool out, change out the plug, put a new pin in, and your new coils, they may not have this pin on them, it may just be a wire hanging off. I really don't feel like dealing with any of that. So I'm going to go for the newer design coils, easily replaceable, no special tools required, and install these. These still have the original little wiring loom attached to them. I'm going to zoom out here. So I'm going to get my tool out and get all that taken apart. This has a damaged plug. I'm going to swap that out real quick. So the top coil goes to that one. So we need a removal tool to get this out of there, which probably didn't actually need one for that one. So I'll do this plug swap one at a time, make sure I don't lose where they go. So it goes inside of there. You also need a tool to get these back in, so once they're sitting in there, I'll get the tool and push them back in also. Alright, that'll remove the harness. Sometimes you push them a little too far out or into the body, so you just push them back in. You kind of feel a little, let's say no, they're in the right way. But you won't feel that when you're installing them, only when you're pushing them back through. Looks like these wires and coil ends are going to need new terminals. So this will be a, for now, kind of fix. I'll go through them later and actually clean them up. So that installs there, like so. Obviously not going to stay there, but that's where it's going to go for now. And then this side plugs into there. And our ignition system is all wired and hooked up. What I'll do now is put some plug wires on it, put the flywheel back on, give it a turn, and make sure it works. Alright, I just set the flywheel back on here, hooked up some plug wires to make life easy on my spinning of this flywheel. I'm going to take the plugs out. So our bolt there is a good ground. So you can see the light thing, I think. Not a very long cord, I know. But hopefully it'll do the trick. And nothing. Well, nothing on the bottom there, or the top. Let's see if the bottom's doing anything. Well, neither bottom nor top are sparking, so good to know. Power pack's hooked up. Coils are hooked up to power pack. The no ground wire stop switch is attached. So power pack is probably likely suspect. Coils came off of the engine I was running and I took apart to get parts for. So let's start swapping parts. Original power pack, I'm going to pull that off. Again, this ain't supposed to go like that. Alright, let's see if that does anything. Also going to turn this plate up a little. Make sure it's not a all the way off issue. So it doesn't look like much on the bottom there. Let's check the top. And nothing there either. So perhaps my coils are the problem. I'm going to get my multimeter, check at the grounds real quick. So I have it on the audible mode, so it beeps whenever ground's detected or they touch. So what I'm doing is checking for grounds, making sure they're all working right. So far so good. No ground default going to our rectifier. And coil wires are all okay. I don't think I'm going to get a ground through here, but check. Nope. So now we know chances are the power pack is okay. Chances of having two bad ones, slim to none. So I'm taking the coils out now. At least one of them. And I'll swap it to one of the ones I took out of here. See if that fixes our problem. which it may not. I'm not going to worry about the bottom, it's just a mounting. So I'm just going to plug our coil wire into some random terminal. Keep that away a little. Look at the spark tester to it. Well, no spark on that. And no spark there. So, might as well. The chances of these coils being bad, you know. Well, I know these top two are good because they came out of a running motor. It's possible that this type of ignition system can't charge these types of coils or something. Possible, doubtful, possible. Or not compatible with the power pack. Could be all kinds of different things. What I'm guessing is that something's wrong with our ignition plate there. And nothing from the other coil. So we've tried 4 coils, 2 power packs. Chances are pretty good the problem lies under the flywheel. I'm going to tap it down a little just to make sure that it's not the fact that I don't have the flywheel tightened on. And still no spark. And everything is connected properly. I think I'm at full throttle now. Nothing. Alright, well, good to know, but now I gotta undo everything. Not a big deal. So, I guess this is gonna be part A of this. I'm gonna make another video showing you replacing this. It's kind of a funky system anyway, this thing. You don't really see many of them. But just to make sure. So our stator plate is grounding to the power head. Alright, we definitely have ground going to the stator, so the stator's ground's not the issue. This junk is all connected correctly. No dead ground faults going out of the charge coil connectors here. Me changing this out. Anyway, so wait for part 2 of this.